What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So you remember when DOGE was looking for waste, fraud, and abuse when it comes to Social Security? They were going through all of the Social Security information. I told you guys back then that that was a really bad idea. And I think a lot of people were out there saying this is a really bad idea that we're allowing this outside agency to have access to all of this important information, vital information. So PBS did some investigative reporting. I'm going to show you this clip. Okay, now this is a little bit lengthy. We'll watch it together and we'll stop and talk a little bit along the way. But the spoiler alert here is this information was accessed by people who should not have accessed this information. So I'm going to show you this video clip, but first off, you guys can do me a favor. Please like the video. And if you're watching this video and you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Okay, so let's go ahead and play the clip. Like I said, it's a little lengthy, so we'll watch it together and we'll, I'll stop it and talk a little bit along the way. But here we go.
The Social Security Administration now says members of Elon Musk's DOGE team working at the agency last year accessed and shared sensitive data. In a court filing earlier this month, the Trump administration amended what it had previously disclosed, writing that one DOGE employee at SSA signed an agreement with an unnamed political advocacy group to analyze voter rolls to, quote, find evidence of voter fraud and to overturn election results in certain states. In another instance, a DOGE member shared personally identifiable information of 1,000 people in an encrypted email attachment, though the government says they aren't sure what specifically was shared or whether it was accessed.
Now, remember, this was all about waste, fraud, and abuse. How many times did you hear the president say this? How many times did you hear politicians say this? We're looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. We're looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. And they even came up, and you had Elon Musk out there talking about people 150 years old are receiving Social Security checks and all this. Whatever happened to all of that? That didn't go anywhere, but they had access to all this information, and they were releasing, exposing this information to people who shouldn't have had their eyes on it.
And SSA also said DOGE shared data on third-party cloud servers that are, quote, outside SSA's security protocols, so the agency doesn't know what information was shared or if it still exists on the server. The latest disclosures seem to confirm some key concerns first raised in a whistleblower complaint last summer filed by the agency's chief data officer. That whistleblower, Chuck Borges, involuntarily resigned from government in August and filed a retaliation complaint late last year. I spoke with him earlier alongside his lawyer, Deborah Katz. Welcome to you both. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, Chuck, before we get into the details, these new details, this new filing rather, confirms what first you shared when you came forward in your whistleblower complaint months ago. What did you think when you saw all this, especially after months of government denials?
I'll be honest, I was pretty disappointed. This is a situation where the public loses. My disclosure essentially outlined three concerns that I had. The first was that DOGE employees had inappropriate access to our data. The second was that they violated a temporary restraining order. And that the third was that they had uploaded sensitive Social Security data to a cloud server without adequate security controls. In all three of those instances, the public's data is at risk. So to have validation of those first two concerns is disappointing, especially in light of the fact that these could have been investigated and uncovered months ago.
Well, speaking to that timeline, Deborah, the court filing was on January 16. There were a number of corrections to the previous testimony from agency officials. What's your understanding of why it took so long for the government to correct those previous testimonies?
Because the government's not telling us the truth. I still don't think we know the full story. The allegations that Mr. Borges raised are quite serious. And he raised them with the federal agency that is responsible, Office of Special Counsel, for investigating his disclosures. And rather than investigating it, they've kicked it to a different agency. In terms of his retaliation claims, they haven't investigated it at all. So we have a situation in a very real sense where the fox is guarding the hen house.
Let's talk about what's at stake here. Chuck, you mentioned in some of the details of what you came forward to share. Broadly speaking, what are the dangers, as you see them, of sharing that kind of personal data on a cloud server?
Right. So Social Security data is your most sensitive personal information. It's the information that's on your birth certificate. So when you apply for a mortgage and you have to answer security questions, and it's what's your mother's maiden name and what's your place of birth and what's your father's middle name. All of that information is held resident at Social Security. Mm-hmm. So to put that personally identifiable information that can be used to propagate identity theft, mortgage fraud, steal small business loans, impersonate dead people into an environment where it could be downloaded or accessed inappropriately or stolen or shared. It's a risk to literally every single living and dead American's ability to have a daily life.
And we should point out, we don't know what was on the cloud server, correct?
So my disclosure pretty specifically alleges that a database called the Numident, which is the master database of your personal information, was uploaded to an AWS cloud environment. Now, that is different from the court filing last week, which resided around specific data access for specific DOGE employees. But if those first two things that I alleged were correct, I'm very concerned about the third one, especially when you're normally protecting data. It is very easy to produce documentation that shows that the data has been safe and secure all along.
Mm-hmm. Let me try to square some of the information.
Sure.
And one other thing that, I think he was kind of alluding to this, where's the chain of custody? So generally when you have, especially when it's government agencies and it's sensitive material, sensitive information, there's always a chain of custody. So you have to sign off on, okay, yes, I have access to this, or I pass this to another person. That is customary. I worked in county government for 21 years, and that is what we had to do. We had to follow the chain of custody. It was very, very important, because if it ever showed up in court or anything like that, we had to show the chain. We had to show where that material went. And in my case, it was evidence. If we had evidence, there was a chain of custody, and we had to be able to go to the court, write a report to the court and say, look, this was the chain of custody. This is how the information came from this place, went here, then went there, and then went there. That is what we had to present. But in this situation, there was no chain of custody. It looks like DOGE was just able to put this on a cloud server, and anyone could have really had access to it, and they didn't have to show that they had access to it. They didn't have to follow any type of chain of custody.
You've seen out there now, because when you came forward, you warned the personal information of some 300 million Americans could be at risk. The government in their filing says information from 1,000 people was shared on email. Do you believe it could be limited to just 1,000?
No.
There's no way?
No.
And why not?
So again, my disclosure outlined a pattern of bad behavior. This court filing validates the first two pieces of that puzzle. The third piece has not yet been validated or refuted yet with any documentation. But if the first two allegations are correct, I'm very concerned about the third. As far as the 300 million, that was just initial news reporting. That database houses personal information, as I understand it, on all living and dead Americans. So this is a real risk to everybody.
Deborah, there's also this other piece of it we reported on where DOGE employees were alleged to have secretly been in contact with a political advocacy group, part of an effort, as we know now, seeking voter information and personal information there. Those employees, we understand, have now been referred to a federal watchdog group to see if they violated the Hatch Act, which would bar government employees from using their job for political activity. What do you know about that probe? Do you trust that there'll be accountability there?
I trust there will be no accountability there. In fact, when members of this administration have been found guilty of violating the Hatch Act, there's no consequences, none at all. The Hatch Act is, there are no criminal penalties. If this has happened, these are criminal violations, and they need to be fully investigated, and these people need to be prosecuted. And there needs to be a complete, thorough investigation to see the extent of this. And I believe, as Mr. Borges just said, it's far greater than the 1,000 documents that they acknowledge, 1,000 people that they acknowledge are at risk.
1,000 is a far cry from the 300 million that you think could
million,
be
potentially
at risk here. So can Americans know? Can they be sure that their data has not been compromised?
They can't be sure until the agency releases documentation that proves or refutes my allegations one way or the other. To date, they have released zero. As a matter of fact, if I recall right, one of the people involved in the investigation into my concerns was one of the people named in the disclosure.
Okay, and so then he goes on to talk about his campaign, his state Senate seat that he's running for. Now, the key takeaway from what he was saying there is this is about all of us. It's not just about people receiving Social Security benefits. It's about all of us, because from the time that we're born, we're issued a Social Security number that follows us along for our whole life. And so all of the things that we do, the transactions that we make when we use our Social Security number, our credit, all of that stuff is tied into the Social Security number. And so if someone is able to get that information, guess what? They're able to sign up for credit cards. They're able to sign up for a mortgage. They're able to do a lot of different things. And I've told this story before. This just happened to me last year, where someone signed up for a credit card, a store credit card. They went in and they bought almost $15,000 worth of product. $15,000 worth of products is what they bought with this credit card in my name. And I had to, of course, it wasn't me. And the only reason that I caught it is because I have credit monitoring, and I saw that someone opened up a new account. I looked into it and found out that it was $14,889 that they spent on this credit card at this store. And so I went ahead and went through the proper, chain. I called the store and said, hey, this isn't me. And they did their investigation. It took about a month and a half. They came back and they said, yeah, you're not at fault. But guess what? They were able to get my information from somewhere. And it could have been this situation. It could have been that my information was on a cloud server and they had everything. They had my Social Security number. They knew where I lived. They knew all of that information, and they were able to sign up for a card. And so that's the fear here. And luckily I had credit monitoring. If I did not have credit monitoring, I probably wouldn't have caught it. It would have taken a while to catch it. I probably would have saw my credit score change, and then I might have acted after that. But that could have been after they've already spent the money and it was time for me to pay. It could have gotten to the point where it was sent to collections. I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known anything until I receive a phone call from a collection agency saying, you owe this money. And I'm saying, what are you talking about? I never spent this money. If these politicians want to find waste, fraud, and abuse, that's fine. You can look at waste, fraud, and abuse within the government. That's your job to represent us by doing that. But if you hire an outside agency, you need to make sure that outside agency is following the proper protocol. And in this case, they weren't. So I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye. So that's all we have for this video. Make sure if you guys want to send me an email, you can do that, david@thetecshow.com. Like the video, subscribe for more, and check out these videos over here for some more great content. Talk to you later. Bye.